Good day and welcome to another episode of The Nature of Healing. My name is Jen Shepherd and I am your host and your guide as we walk through the next half hour or so together, reminding ourselves that the nature of healing is the recognition of all those aspects of love that flow through our lives, even in dreary times, even in hard times, even in times when we are working on healing our physicalness, when we're working on our spiritual growth, and whether we're just not working on anything and being and living and having that shift and that chance and that choice to recognize and notice that there is love everywhere. Some aspect of love is playing out in our lives all the time. As I look out the window, the sun here is starting to shine, which is just gorgeous. The last couple of days we've had such the amount of thunderstorms and rainstorms, and which is a little unusual because the area I live in, we're prone to snowstorms this time of year. And yet we've had this rain and this kind of unexpected or unseasonably warm days. And now that the sun is shining brightly and you can feel that there's like this new beginning hanging in the air. There's this recognition of a promise that never has to be spoken. That gift and that recognition of hope coming out of the dark and coming out of this dreary, gray, squishy, muddy winter and into the light and the sun, that hope and that feeling and that glow of spring, that recognition of the flow of life. It's always reminding us that there's always beginnings. If there's an ending, there's a beginning. If there's darkness, there's light. And from that darkness and that dreariness, there's warmth right around the corner. There's new growth in spring. There's a different way that the light of the sun feels and the warmth of the air. It's like this change of seasons from winter to spring. For me, it's that reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light and the hope, that hope of life and newness and growth, it's always there. It flows, it moves, it keeps a steady pulse throughout all seasons. The nature of our humanity, our seasons of humanity, the different phases of life we go through, and the seasons and the phases of nature, and the way our world and moves and flows and ebbs. And it's just beautiful reminder as I see the sun shining through the window that hope and light are always there. They're always there, even when it's hard for us to see it. And the flow of hope is the energy, is that aspect of conditional love that binds each of us from this now moment to the next moment, from this now to the next now. That hope is full of strength and tenacity, and that fabric of the universe is woven together with that hope. It seems sometimes as if our humanity is just on the surface. It's like the tension of the water, and when you put something on top of the water, when you're, if you have this bucket of water and you put a sponge on top and the sponge floats, it's that little bit of tension at the top of the water that keeps everything afloat, the items that are able. And it's a choice then to push that sponge under the water. It's a choice to dip below the tension dip below the surface into that flow and that possibility within the flow. I mean, if we don't push this sponge down below that surface tension, it doesn't get wet, it doesn't get soapy, and we're not able to clean. If we're not willing to push past any kind of tension on that surface and into that flow of hope underneath, it's really hard for us to wrap around any kind of notion of healing or furthering or moving forward or floating along, cleaning and healing. It's a choice, right? I mean, if we're going to push the sponge in the water, that's a choice. If we're going to allow ourselves to move past and into the flow, it's a choice. It's that beautiful free will component of human equation. And with individual consciousness comes the ability to choose how to perceive and interpret our individuality. And that means choice, always choice. How do we choose to perceive our world? Do we perceive the world as a cruel and punishing place where winter just never ends and we're gray and gloomy all the time? Or do we believe the only way to see more of the world and get more out of the world is to compete with our neighbors and make sure we have more stored away, and maybe we're competing with our environment, making sure that we have first crack at whatever's in the ground or whatever's around us? Or are we choosing to dip into that unseen, beneath that surface tension, to that quiet depths of flow, into that steady pulse of the unseen light? I mean, that's where hope is. That's that light of hope, that flow of hope. It's in that space underneath the tension. It's that space of choice. So it's not always seen. It's not seen like the sun flowing through my window. We know, though, that through science and physics, there are many, 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 many wavelengths of light. The ones that are easily accessible with human eyes and the ones that aren't quite accessible. At Unity each week, we light the candle when we meet. We have some meditation time. We have time where we're dipping into that unseen area together. And when we light that candle, it's that symbol of light, of the divinity, the Christ, the Spirit that flows through us, often unseen, right under the surface. It's that light that moves in us and through us and from us, especially when we choose and when we align with choices that are in that spirit of hope, that emanate hope, that flows with hope. But what the heck? What the heck is hope? How do we even know what that is? It's such a funny little word. And yet it's a powerful, powerful word. It's that gift of linear time. It's that gift that comes with, well, what's next? It's the gift of knowing that there's always a forward in our humanity. It's that gift that this present, this moment right now, leads to the next present moment in the now. And each present moment, each breath, we have a choice on how we see the world, a choice on how to move and be in the world and who to be in the world. UNICEF is this beautiful world organization dedicated to taking care of the children of our planet, the planet's hope for the future. It goes, or humanity's hope for the future, or life's hope for the future, however you want to frame that. But it goes into these most horrendous situations, and it makes sure, or tries to make sure, that children are being looked after and cared for. And UNICEF posted a story to their social media of their representatives and reporters in the middle of Gaza. And in the place that representative was, it looked like, if you look at this picture, it's just almost void of hope. It's just crumbled and awful, and it's just, it looks like you're in the middle of a end of days movie. And thousands upon thousands of children are being hurt and killed in this present where this reporter is. And as that reporter stood in the rubble, a Palestinian who is ragged, who looked like he hadn't ate or slept in days, approached him with this little cardboard cup full of coffee and offered it to the reporter. Imagine this, during despair and in the midst of having nothing because it's been just destroyed out of your existence in this rubble. Palestinian who had lost everything, including friends and family members, shared what little was available to share. Sharing the coffee, making that invisible light visible. It's sharing the hope. It's the choice. This moment, this is what moves the world into healing. It's what lights the world. Hope is what we must hand down to our next generations. We can choose to hand down worry and hate and despair. Each trip, each influence beyond the reach of what we can possibly imagine. We have choices to hand down trauma, or we have the choice to move in the flow of hope. Now, hope is talked about a lot in our spiritual lives. I mean, when we're in our spiritual nature, or we're recognizing that, or we're with our spiritual groups or our churches, we talk about hope as much as we talk about grace. We know it's a part of our makeup, and we know it's part of the equation, but sometimes the variables for the equation don't quite translate. We don't quite come up with that balanced equation. We don't understand what hope means in that moment, in any moment, in this moment. Psychologists have brought hope into the research of the day and how hope impacts our lives. And they have found that when there is hope, there's growth. There's more gratitude and happiness when there's hope. There's a healthier body. We're talking about healing here and the nature of healing. And that aspect of unconditional love, hope, moves our bodies, into healthier minds, and into healthier communities. Scientists found that hope can break family and organizational trauma. They found that hope can move the next generation, can move our children into a world of choices and possibilities that was not previously thought or felt in the now. They found that hope is not a pie in the sky endeavor. It's not like this outlandish prayer or wish. It's an actual choice. It's an action on the choice. It's choosing to share a cup of coffee while walking in the ruins of a city that's been under embargoment and has recently claimed the life of your family and friends. It's separating from what we need in letting go and moving forward. It's choosing to take the next step down the path that may not have been traveled by you or society or your group or your family previously. There's a quote from The Fourth Dimension Plus by Avery Ingram. It says, everyone is bound only by their attention upon the apparently fixed dimension of time, space, and form. There is an infinite realm of freedom and opportunities available. In other words, are you ready to be in the silence? Are you ready to be here? Are you ready to not be afraid to feel that flow of energies that's connecting all of us together, that's surrounding us, that's flowing through us? And are we ready to reach the hope that is flowing in that space of connection and silence? Also, in The Fourth Dimension Plus, he says that if all people apply themselves to know the unknowing, attaining the yet unattained, progressing into the realm of new powers, new possibilities, now discoveries, they are truly functioning in their rightful estates, establishing themselves more and more in their fundamental relationship with the universal mass, the source from while all form, including themselves. All people are circumscribed by their thoughts, their measure of events, and their measure of life. And when their thoughts are uncircumscribed, their progress into absolute freedom begins. So our first step, out of the chaos of the beginning came light. All wavelengths of life. Let there be light. We are the light. I am the light. Let your light shine. All the wavelengths. A few weeks ago, when this idea of hope and healing started really churning in my head, I was really having trouble finding words. I mean, how does somebody explain that hope is an aspect of unconditional love that moves through us for healing? I mean, it seemed insurmountable, even though the feeling was there. How do we explain this flow of the unseen and yet so much there and tangible and powerful? And how do we explain to each other and even stand ourselves that hope is a choice? And then one night, as I was pretty good asleep, I woke up in like this waking dream. There were like 3 huge, loud knocks that I was aware of. And I bolted awake, like my heart's racing. I'm a mom, so immediately I think, well, what the heck's happening? Was it the cats that knocked something over? Or is there something wrong with one of the kids? Did something happen to the house? What the heck? I heard huge knocks, bolted me awake. And in that midst of panic and wondering what's wrong with the children, there was this soft voice that I was really aware of. I don't know who the voice was. I'm not sure I recognized the voice, and yet it felt so close and so familiar. All it said was to breathe slowly. So in the trust of that familiarity feeling, I did. And in that breathing slowly, I started to perceive in the darkness of my room, this swirl of the liveliness present even in the darkness. It's like the answer to what I've been wondering. It's like actually visualizing the hope that's not normally visible. And it's just flowing and moving, and almost like the starry night painting. And I was able to see my choices in the flow and notice that the hope choices were motivated by the children, by my children that first came to mind when I woke up suddenly. That each time difficulty set in, each time I learned more about healing for myself, the hope I offered my children and the hope I offered for their lives changed what could have been handed down despair and pessimism. So, in that swirl of now visible from the invisible and my perception of that waking dream state, there was this recognition that the ability for my children to move forward and make choices void of any previous family life interpretations was because of my hope for them. So we can, through our choices, flow hope to each other. Just as we radiate compassion and we radiate prayers and healing, we can radiate hope. It's another wavelength of that one light. Hope means we give each other choices that are not based entirely on despair and lack and fear. It means when we are willing to take on healing and dip below that surface tension for ourselves, we support each other in the choices that aren't yet made yet. And choices then can be made in the best. It's the individual in that point of their life, in that point of the flow, in that present. Not encumbered by our own fear or our lack or handing down of unresolvedness from our own past, our humanity's past, our community's past, organization's past. And in that flow I experienced in this waking dream, despair was slowly shrinking. It's like the flow of hope as it grew and it flowed and it moved around did not allow despair and hatred and acting out in competition to spread. It swirled around. It was like the despair became these still pockets, and the hope just kept swirling around and finding pathways around and isolating those patches. It was like it was just cut off from the rest, so it couldn't spread anymore. There's always going to be something. We're human. We have human experiences. So this feeling of despair, these still places, these pockets within the flow of hope, it's still taking up space. And we may come upon a pocket here and there that doesn't reflect the light readily. There will always be patches of unflowing and unreflective substance. but to stay there, to sink in that, or to get through the tension on the surface of that and into the flow of hope. That's the choice. There may be an illness, an accident, a loss, a hardship. We're not less for recognizing times of darkness and despair. We're not less for sitting in that stillness every now and again. The darkness, though, that stillness, that unmoving, that offers choice. Do we stay there? Or do we move as much as we can and able back into the flow? Do we choose to make decisions from a stance of hope? Do we choose to share the coffee? About 7-ish years ago, I went to visit my friend, whose name is Navin, and who lives in New Jersey. Navin's mentor and friend had just passed at that time, and there was this beautiful ceremony for her. And Navin practiced Hinduism, so the ceremony was different than anything I'd been a part of. It was very beautiful. It was full of food. And after the ceremony, we went and visited several temples. And in one small temple we visited, I sat and I soaked up the atmosphere as Navin shared in a chanting with the priest and several others that were there. And I sat and I flowed and I appreciated. And after, the priest came to chat with me and he asked if I was Hindi. And first, I found it beautiful that he didn't just assume that the palest person in the room was not Hindi or didn't understand what was going on, and generally wanted to get to know me. So, but I told him, no, I was not. I was there with my friend, and he was sharing with me the culture, the experience, the teachings, and I was appreciating very much being included in what I was learning and the day. And he smiled and he said, "Oh, no matter. My God, your God, my God. Now we have some coffee." Thanks for spending some time with me today and allowing me to share with you that flow of hope and a little bit of virtual coffee. Again, my name is Jen Shepherd. You can send your questions and comments about healing to boltsoflove@gmail.com. That's boltsoflove@gmail.com. And any of your questions or comments will be woven into further discussions. If there's somebody in particular you'd like me to chat with, or you would like to chat about your own experiences, please also reach out. I appreciate you being here and sharing with me. You can find me at Unity in Edinburgh and at Bolts of Love. Take care, following your own healing progress, your own healing pathway, and your own healing light. And may you find the hope and the choices of hope in this present moment and in all your days ahead. Take care.